Hey everybody, good morning and good afternoon. This is Chris Cameron speaking again, opening up our open office hours for the automated class and enrollment maintenance. Our agenda essentially for today is going to be really wide open. We wanted this 1 hour so that y'all can come and ask us any of your detailed questions that you have on the tools. Maybe talk to us about your experiences, any kind of enhancement request, that sort of thing. So we are really here for you guys. So our same team that we had 2 weeks ago are on this call. We've got myself, we've got Bob, we've got Ken, Melissa, Kevin, and Kelly. So we are all here from a functional and a technical perspective to help where we can. So on that note, please feel free for some quick logistics. There are quite a few folks. If we get really detailed questions, we can open up mics and we can do it via voice. Otherwise, if you'd like, please feel free to leverage the chat feature to ask your questions, and we will go through the questions and deep dive where need be. Does anyone have, out of the folks here, does anyone have any questions on leveraging the tool sets? Installation questions, compatibility questions, usability questions, features, anything of that nature? And Melissa, we do have a couple of questions from before that we can dive into as well. Did you want to start with some of those as we're waiting for any new ones?
Sure. So I think this will this is Melissa, student records background, functional, and I think it'll help get those questions generated. So this functionality is indeed built in Fluid. So some of the questions we got from the last session was, is it built in Fluid? And
well, so actually,
classic.
Yes.
Sorry, I was reading the question, not the answer.
It's built in 9.2. Because they're more administrative pages, we did not build them in Fluid. So if you are Classic only, they'll work. If you are using a Fluid user interface, they will work just as well. But they are using the Classic functionality. But Classic and Fluid work fine hand in hand.
Is this available for beyond just the next term for addressing the COVID issues and physical distancing? And yes, you can use this functionality for all future terms if you like. And looks like we've got a hand going up as well. Let's see here. It does increment the numerical sections in the class sections cloning process. If your class sections are all alpha, unfortunately, we don't have a numerical value to trigger off of to get that max number. So it may be that you'll be able to use the enrollment functionality, but may not be as helpful on the class sections functionality. We do process enrollment overrides quite a bit. So in the documentation, we have listed all the flags for the enrollment override. So you'll want to make sure that you take a look at the documentation, and on the last page of the functional documentation, it does list all the settings for the enrollment overrides. And
we have two new questions. We haven't done any upgrades since July 6th, have we, Chris?
No, so we had a question if there's a newer version. The current version is version 2B, as in Bravo. That is the current release. We do not know of any bugs yet, so we have not created another version. So if anyone does identify bugs, please let us know. Right now, our focus is going to be on keeping the team freed up to address any bugs as quickly as we can. So 2B, 2 Bravo is the current version.
And there was a question about alphanumeric class section numbers. Yes, it does work. So if you have like, if you have a lab that's now labeled 101L, the next one would be 102L, then 103L, then 104L, and so forth. So it just keeps the alpha part the same and increments the numeric part.
And that would work as well if there was a leading alpha, then a numeric, and then a tailing alpha. That construct works as well.
Melissa, back to you.
I know we have a quiet group.
We have a very quiet group. Either that means they haven't tried it yet, or we are a lot smarter than we thought we were.
We did a lot of testing, but you know how that goes as well. Can we get a quick show of hands? How many of y'all have loaded this into your environments, and it could be non-prod, and have started testing and reviewing the data? And there's a little raise your hand feature. Oh, gotcha. And we're receiving some comments. Some folks are still waiting on the agreement so that they can get the code.
Okay.
I'm wondering, has everyone on this team or on our list seen the functionality, or at least the web, at least the video playback? Okay. Because if you haven't, you might want to take a look at the video playback as well from the last session. Okay. And it looks like we've got lots more comments coming in.
Can we, Kim or someone, can we paste in a link to the website into the chat so everyone could get a direct link? On our website, we have all of the upcoming sessions that we're holding. And in addition, we've got the area where you can actually request the code if you haven't done it yet. And the process is, once you request, we'll send an agreement. The agreement gets signed, and then we send the code. And then in addition, on that site is all video uploads from these sessions, so you can watch the overview that we did 2 weeks ago as well. And then thank you, Noreen. We will we see your question, and we'll work with Bob to get that out ASAP.
I think, I think for those of you who are going to be using this directly, before you get there, maybe a pre-prep item that you could do is just to ensure that your class schedule, existing class schedule, the data integrity validations, just double check that to make sure that it's all good. When we were testing, because we tested out of our demo environment, we do tend to have lots of data, some of it questionable out there, and we did encounter this. So, just do a validation on your associated class numbers, double check your class section IDs, that kind of information, just to make sure that you're going to have good results. I think there was a question coming out early on about, multiple, what is it? Oh gosh, I just had a completely lost. Yes, course offerings. So just make sure that, the course offerings, we did validate, it does work. So just, double check your data, make sure that it's all good to begin with. That way you're not cloning off any bad data or inadvertently cloning off sections that you don't want to clone. Looks like, let's see here, we have another question. Says in one of the views, SCI class table V2 has an NVL in the SQL. Since this is an Oracle function, it would be helpful to let users know this.
Thanks for that, Dave. And I think you guys are on DB2, if I can recall correctly. So yes, we do have that. Microsoft, okay, SQL Server, okay. Yes, we do have the NVL, and that is an update. We'll take an action item to comment on that in the tech docs. Thanks, David.
You know, Chris, since so many people haven't seen this yet, I wonder if it's worth taking 15 minutes, not to do a full-blown demonstration, but at least show them what the pages look like.
So
Voila.
how many here using the raise hand feature have not yet seen the overview that we did 2 weeks ago, and this is your first experience?
Yeah, there's a bunch.
There's quite a few. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Well, while we are waiting for more questions that may crop up, then let's start with, we'll do a really high level abbreviated overview. And just please note that we have a nice long 1 hour session on this that you can find from our website. Kim, thank you for posting that into the chat. Please feel free in the chat, you'll see the website and you can watch the 1 hour overview. So with the functionality that we developed and designed, we wanted to hit 2 core areas in the system that we saw as potential issue areas for getting ready for fall or future terms where we're needing to do lots of scheduled class changes and potentially lots of enrollment management, aka moving students from class 1 to class 2 or multiple classes, etc. So we designed this bolt-on. It's a complete bolt-on for Campus Solutions, tested in CS9.2 on PeopleTools 857, also on PeopleTools 856. We have learned that some folks are able to get it to go in 855 on CS9.0. So there are schools out there that have been working on getting this into other versions, and as well going forward into 858 versions as well. You may bump into some items with component interfaces needing to be tweaked because of what PUM version you might be on or what application bundle version you're on. But those are items that your tech team should be able to quickly see and quickly resolve. We've only heard one of those so far, though. So based on the 2 pieces of functionality, when you install this into your application, you're going to get a folder that has 2 different components in it. There is the class schedule maintenance, and there's the class enrollment maintenance. The class schedule maintenance, the idea here is that we might have a use case where we have certain classes that, let's say for instance, we had to go from in-person classes in the fall to strictly virtual classes. So we might want to update hundreds of class sections to change them from in-person to virtual. So to do that, we could base our search, and we tried to mimic the basic class schedule searching so that you can properly find and identify what classes you want to work with. And then we also added some functionality around enrollment capacity, which is an integer field that you could say, give me all the classes that are greater than or equal to 50%, so no percent here, but 50 of capacity. And that would find if we had a class that had a 20 student capacity and there were 10 students enrolled, that would qualify for a 50% capacity. So we'll remove that. Let's look at, we're gonna look for fall, or actually we can go to, what was it, 2207?
That's correct.
And let's look at psychology, and let's just keep it open. So
And
we're gonna
Chris,
pull back, yes.
hold on a sec. So folks, I think online, when you're seeing this, you're gonna see the screen flashing. And so it's because the system is doing, returning values and processing. On the video, it does not flash for you. So if that's bothersome, I would say take a look at the video as well. It'll be a lot better.
And just to assure you, you're not missing anything in the flash.
Thanks, Melissa and Ken. So once we search on our classes in the class sections grid, we get the viewable classes that met our criteria. Inside of this, let's say, for instance, we're gonna be looking and updating, let's say this is Psychology 100, class section 2. We're going to change the mode from P to IN for internet, which is the demo value for the virtual class. We can set the class status if we want to change it from active or to inactive, canceled, etc. We can update our class associations en masse. We can change our enrollment capacities. It'll tell us what the current enrollment is. We can change our waitlist capacities, the instruction mode, which we just discussed. And we have this functionality for number of new sections so that we can clone it. So if we had a class, and I don't see any here, that had lots of enrollments, let's say they had an enrollment of 40 and or 35 and our enrollment cap, but now we need to drop our enrollment cap to 20 because of social distancing. We can't have that many students in the room. We can say, give me 2 new sections cloned exactly off from Psychology 100 class section 2. And once we run this, so we can save and then run, once we run this, what's going to happen is this section will get updated. The capacity will be changed to 20. The instruction mode will be changed to internet, and then it's going to clone it 2 times. And it's going to take the class section, and it has a little smart logic to increment the number that is inside of that section. So depending on this catalog number, the last section is 4, it would create section 5 and section 6. It will also clone any associated components that might be attached to that section as well. Now, that's an example of just updating one section. Let's say, for instance, we wanted to do a mass update. At the very bottom, we have defaults to apply to all class sections. I can say I'm going to change all of my classes for psychology to be internet. And then what I want to do is I want to select all classes. So I push the select all button and then I can apply. And it's going to go through the class sections and change all of them to internet. Then when I run this, it will update every class that I have checked to the internet instruction mode. So we anticipated using this functionality. Yes, it works great for handling items that may be specific around social distancing and going to virtual classes, but really this functionality will work for future terms as well. So if you're doing, after you roll your scheduled classes, if there are a lot of changes you need to make to that new schedule, you can leverage this functionality. It does not have to be, COVID related or something caused by the pandemic. This could potentially be a long-term business process enhancement. And when we were working with some of our pilot schools, they were giving us some feedback on how this functionality could be leveraged, and we worked in some of their enhancement requests so that they can actually automate a bit more of the manual business processing that they were having to do for every term. And it was a lot of effort that they were saving on themselves. So inside of this, we also have some features where we can view the class. It'll take you to more details per class on whichever one you're viewing, etc.
Don't go away without talking about combined section, Chris.
Yes. So one of the key areas that we had a request for was handling combined sections. So if we wanted to, let's take Psych 235, section 28. This is in a combined section. We have the ability to clone the section. So if we say, I want to create this section, Psych 235, section 28, 3 more times, I can say, also clone my combined sections. So that means every section that is combined inside of combined section ID of 16, it will also clone those, and it will create the new combined section IDs. So it would create, if 16 was the last combined section, which it's not because I see 24 here, let's just pretend 16 was the last, it would create combined section ID 17, 18, and 19. And then it will include the cloned classes in the groupings that it created. So this was a nice feature that one of the schools had requested that they saw, because they heavily used combined sections. And of course, we can view the combined section detail if we wanted to here. So it would clone Psych 235, and it would clone Stats 115, and Section 23 and Section 28. And just a reminder, this is cloning class sections. It's not cloning from the course. So if there are multiple course offerings, it's really only hitting the sections that we identify within this class sections grid. All right, that is the quick 5 minutes on the schedule maintenance. The next piece of this, let's say, for instance, our use case, we had that class that had 35 enrollments and a 35 capacity, and we needed to drop it down to, let's say, 10 capacity, and we cloned it 3 more times so that we could hold 40 students. But now we have that class that has, if it had 35, it has 25 enrollments over the capacity now. So now we need to look at moving those students. So let's go into the class enrollment maintenance piece. In this functionality, we have the exact same search, the same search criteria. We're going to go to 2207. This is where we could just carte blanche say, give me all classes that are 100% or more at capacity, because I need to start moving those students. So let's pick one of these. We have Anthropology 102. The enrollment total is 11. The enrollment capacity is 10. Let's use this one. So we're going to select this class. So we're saying I need to adjust the enrollments in this class because we are over the capacity. So I'm going to select that class. It then moves us into the second page in the component, which gives us some high-level detail on the source class. This is our Anthro 102 that we were just looking at, where our enrollment total is 11, capacity was 10. And now what we want to do is we want to look at our assignment options. This is where we're going to go through and we're going to decide how we want to select the students, and then how we want to assign them into different classes. So for our purpose, let's only move the overcapacity enrollment. So theoretically, this should only select one student. Then what we're going to do is the select enrollments. How do we want to select who to move? We have the option of selecting the last enrolled date time. So this would mean the last person in would be the first person out, or we can randomize it. So it would just randomly select however many students are selected in the first item to move. We're going to do last in, first out. Then how do we want to decide where to move them to? In the target class sections, we have the ability to select more than one class for the options to move them into. So we're going to select the 2 that we can move into. And we're going to say, fill the next available section. So as long as we have a gap between the capacity and the totals, we're going to move them into that class. Then we're auto defaulting time conflicts. So it does take a pass at trying to find a section that you've selected for a target that the student will not have a time conflict with. And this is based on the days and times based on their current enrollments against the potential target classes that we're looking to push them into. And then we can exclude students that might have negative enrollment service indicators. So if we have a student that has an unable to swap or unable to add or drop service indicator, we can exclude those. I'm going to skip that. And now we are going to preview what the results are going to be. So because we selected move over capacity enrollments, there was only one. It's going to then look at the last date time of the enrollment request. It's going to look at which section has availability that does not have a time conflict, because I checked the time conflict box, and it's going to tell us what class number it's going to move it to. So it's saying this student was in class number 1202. They are going to move into 1676, which was this one, and it's telling us there was no time conflict, and it's telling us this is not a related class. There is functionality here that if there were related classes or auto-enrolled classes, this functionality all interacts with the delivered enrollment engine. So all we are doing are creating the enrollment request headers and the enrollment request details. So all of the delivered enrollment engine functionality still works. Melissa talked earlier on the documentation on what overrides we're setting. That is documented in the user guide. So if you're curious on what overrides we're setting on these enrollment requests, you can see it there. And then once we run this, it's essentially using all of the data from this preview results. And this is where you can do your overrides. You can say, no, I don't want them to go to 1676. I want them to go to 1677. And you can do an override. You can set the action date of the enrollment and then save, run. It will create the enrollment request entries for this, and it will call the COBOL, and it will give us, if I run this, when it finishes, it will give us here the enrollment request ID, and it will also let us know if there were any enrollment request errors. So we're going to give this a second, and then I will come back into it. You do have the ability to add rows. So if there was a related class number, it would preset your class number default details, and you could set all the related classes that you want to move them into. So if you were coming, for instance, from a class that did not have related sections or related classes, but then you want to move them into a class that does, you have the ability to set what those related classes need to be so that the enrollment request has it properly. So let's go back out, come back in. So I essentially just refreshed the page, and it gave me, because the enrollment engine finished, it lets me know what the enroll rec ID is, which you can find inside of the mass enroll delivered enroll rec ID search pages. And then it tells me the error count. So I know, okay, I've got an error here. So now I can go look at the delivered page and see what the error is and why it wouldn't process this enrollment. We have a question. Can we please talk about what happens with meeting patterns when class sections are cloned? Okay, so we are hearing a lot on meeting patterns, and that is one of the current enhancement requests that we have. So we've been in discussion over on our class schedule maintenance. Let me just go back into my other run control. We are debating adding in some more functionality to also clone meeting patterns. Right now, we do not clone meeting patterns. We're assuming those need to be done manually. However, we are getting the feedback that it would be helpful. So what we're thinking about doing are adding a couple more checkboxes that we can say, clone the meeting patterns, AKA days and times, copy over the facility ID, yes or no. So you could essentially use that to still copy days and times, but not the facility. So you can use, for instance, like your AdAster or your Series 25 to go do the room scheduling. And also about instructors. So we were also thinking about adding another toggle to move the instructor information, yes or no. So it would be all configurable on what pieces of the meeting patterns and the child data that you want to move. So currently in version 2 Bravo, it does not have that functionality, but it is on the enhancement request.
This is Ken again. I'm a student records person. I'm sorry I didn't introduce myself before. We're kind of curious for feedback on how to deal with these meeting patterns. I think the reason that we chose not to do it originally is we didn't want to set up conflicts. And we're going to have them if we do it. So are our 3 choices the appropriate ones? Facility, time and days, and instructor the right ones? Should we separate time and days so there are actually 4 choices? Are there other things that make sense to you that we haven't thought about that would work best as far as cloning these meeting patterns? Because we don't want to create problems if we can avoid it. This is supposed to be helpful, not a problem. So anybody who'd like to comment either on the chat now or sending an email to, I guess, Bob, right? Or who are we sending emails to, Chris? I guess Bob is collecting them all.
Yeah, so if we don't have comments now in the chat, please feel free. We'll provide email addresses at the end of this to contact us for further items.
And I would be happy to receive any emails.
Thank you, Bob.
Thanks, Bob. So we received some feedback that those 3 options sound good to us. If we could check boxes to move day, time, instructor, but not room assignment, that would be perfect.
Okay, well, that's what we were talking about.
Yep, that would be great, because that would be 2 of the boxes on, 1 of the boxes off.
Yep.
And timing.
Feedback.
Yep. We received another one. We would also like the options. Yeah, we received quite a few comments on meeting patterns and instructions. So we've been tossing around different designs. So if you do have any alternate designs that you'd like to throw at us, now is the time, because we are in design mode for that feature. Does anyone have any other questions on functionality? We were receiving a couple of really deep dive questions via email. I think we've addressed most of them to date, but does anybody have feedback on if you've started to use this, how it's worked, how your users are responding to it? We tried to keep it as usable as possible. So we tried to keep it as simplistic as possible, so it wasn't complex and cumbersome. But there's always areas of opportunity to enhance that kind of stuff. And we can open up, correct. So we have a question, meeting patterns, will they be blanked for clone sections? Yes, they will. So currently, in the current version, if you clone a class, the meeting pattern will not be cloned. So all of the subsequent data in that second tab of the schedule class maintenance will be, it's essentially empty.
There's also a question here about class fees and class sub fees. To the best of my knowledge, we are not cloning those. That's correct, that my technical friends, isn't it?
Which tab is that on? Is that outside of the scheduled classes?
It's kind of
It's a button modal inside of class schedule.
Or it's the last page. The last tab, I think, has more accounting information. Frankly, I usually let my student financials colleagues deal with all of that. So there's the fee button about halfway down. That's the GL interface, and on the basic page, there's see the fee button right in the middle on the right. You're almost there.
Add fee. Got it. Thank you. I don't know if this, we're going to have to double check how this is related when we do a clone, because the way that the component interface works is we're essentially clicking the add a row. So when we add a row, if this add fee session, let me do regular, whatever is going to default into our add fee section, changes have not been saved, so I've got to save it first. What was the next?
You're not going to hurt anything, Chris.
All right, yeah, this is demo. Enrollment sections 1, 1A, which are MSBs, same component. Oh, lovely. Let me change our associated class to 100, which probably does not exist. There we go. Now let me add fee. So it's gonna pull the defaults. So we're probably gonna have to check the table behind there to see how it copies over.
We'll have to look at some that we've cloned and see where they're copied. I never bothered to look.
That's the first time we've been asked about fees. How would you like the fees to work? What would your Scott? What would your expectation be of what should happen. And we can unmute your mic too if you exact copy would be useful. Okay. All right, we will add that to our review list to take a quick gander. If it copies by simply adding a class and clicking save, then the same exact functionality will work currently. So we'll double check that. Thanks, Scott. And we can, I'm going to push down hands. We can open up mics. So if somebody has a more complex question and you'd like us to open up your mic, just let us know with raising your hand or sending it to chat or question, and we can open it. And just for a quick time check, we have about 20 minutes. Melissa, did we have any other questions we wanted to flow through from the prior session?
Let me take a look.
I remember there was a question about waitlisting, and the answer about waitlisting is it works just like it's delivered. If the class is filled up, or if a class is filled and there's somebody on the wait list and we move some students out, the class remains closed until the wait list is processed, just like we wanted to. Trying to remember what I addressed.
Right. And then there were a couple of questions from the last session about, whether there were a number of rows that could be updated, whether there was a limit. And no, there's not a limit to that. Let's see here.
Dynamic date. We have not done anything with dynamic dates. I know we showed that OEE didn't work very well, if I remember correctly.
So where, do you want to step me through that really quick, Ken?
The dynamic date part?
Yeah, so that's over back on the schedule?
Oh gosh, I need to think about that. It's a process that would recalculate dynamic dates, or that would calculate dynamic dates for clone sessions if they were dynamic date sessions to begin with.
Yeah, my assumption would be we would still need to run that process.
Right, I expect we would.
But that's one use case we haven't tested yet, so that would be a good one. If you want to give that a go on your real data and let us know if you bump into anything, we'd be open ears.
Yeah, part of the problem with working with demo data is trying to find an example that's not pretty funky. A straightforward in class or class enrollment is sometimes challenging. But we can take a look at that, add that to the test list. Thank you very much for all these suggestions. It's really helpful.
Yeah, it's great, and it's good to see that we're getting pretty much some of the requests are all in alignment between multiple different institutions and colleges.
Right.
So it seems like we can have some big impacts on just a couple of added features.
Yeah.
And Chris, there was a question from the last session about, whether we are planning to do continuous maintenance for this code or not. So do you want to have?
Yeah, yep, that sounds good. So part of the first step in requesting the code, the first part of the process is the agreement, and essentially inside of the agreement, it really details the fact that we aren't maintaining this. It's completely free to institutions and colleges. So this is really us trying to give give the community back a really strong baseline that then y'all can take and you can expand on it. You can add features, maybe reshare it back out to the community, that sort of thing. But it's not, we won't be maintaining this for POM updates and such. Now, you're more than welcome to reach out to us if you do need like consulting services or something. We're more than happy to help in that manner if it's a functional resource or a technical resource. But we tried to keep the code very straightforward so that your developers, it should resonate well. From the functional perspective, we tried to keep it as simplistic and documented as well as we could so that your maintenance and overhead, we're trying to minimize all of that kind of stuff.
And then we have another question from Betty. If we could use if users could copy classes from one term to another, any plan for that? So Betty, this will not replace prior term copy. So if you're setting the next term, then you'll want to use the deliver functionality for a prior term copy. So you'll want to, if you're doing fall to fall, spring to spring, you'll want to use the deliver functionality to do the initial setting of your class schedule. And then if you need to make changes to that new class schedule for that term, you could certainly come in here and utilize this functionality to change the values that are available for like instruction mode or whatnot, and then you would use this functionality to extend out the sections to clone those sections off. But I think that's what you're asking is, copying from one term to another. I would say, use the deliver functionality, the prior term copy first. And then let us know if I didn't quite catch your question correctly.
We do have a question around if we can step through the maintain schedule classes to talk about what's copied, what's not copied. And so I pulled up the schedule classes maintain page. So we're using a component interface when we're interacting with this functionality. And essentially what the component interface is doing is it's clicking the plus button to add a row at this level. Once we add a row into the class sections, we're setting the session code to be the session code of the source. We're using an algorithm to derive the class section, and that's why this class section has to have a numeric somewhere in it so that we know what to increment. So we do the increment logic, we update the section. Class start end dates, it will essentially mimic all of the data from this first page that was on the source class. It's going to copy over topics, it's going to copy class attributes. So everything from this first page will be copied like to like. So from the source to the new cloned class.
Let's mention that the associated class number will be incremented appropriately.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for that, Ken. So as we do have a little bit of logic here to update the associated class number. So they're all not being set to, for instance, as 1, which we see as much in the demo environment. From the meetings page, currently we are not doing anything with the meetings tab. This is where we were talking about the functionality of having a yes, no for the pattern and the start end dates, a yes, no for the facility ID, and then a yes, no for instructors. And depending on how that yes, no functionality would go, that's what we would copy over. Currently, that is not in the version 2 Bravo though. Enrollment control, this is copied over from the source class. So anything that we have here on the enrollment control, anything we have, let's see, I'm trying to think, from the reserve capacity, we are not updating any of this sub data. Is that correct, Kevin?
That is correct.
So if there is a need for this level of data, that would be another area, if it would be beneficial for folks, that we could add into an enhancement request. From the notes, we are not copying over notes. The exams, we are not copying over exams. LMS data, we are not copying over LMS data. Textbook, we are not copying textbook child data. And same for the GL interface, we're not copying over any of the journals data. Essentially, everything that is at the level of the section, so everything on the class table is being copied in addition to class attributes, and that would include basically a bit of the enrollment control data. Does that help, Perry? Oh, and Melissa, sorry, did you have something to add?
Oh, just that it's really the functionality is geared toward helping us quickly insert those rows so that we're not having to spend hours and multiple resources out there inserting basically what may be the same information over and over again to address that physical distancing requirement. So it's inserting those rows and then helping us manage the enrollment control so that we can reduce the enrollment capacity so that we can reduce those numbers down to where they need to be in order for our, in-person classes to begin. The other beautiful thing about that functionality is that, for potentially something like English or sociology or psychology, where we can run all of these classes online, and all we need to do is change potentially the instruction mode. We can do those in one fell swoop instead of having to come into this component over and over again to just change one value. We can do so with that new functionality. So it was all about taking a look and saying, what can we, have the most effect? Where do our users are going to have to spend a lot of time changing one or two values or inserting rows just to copy the same data over and over again? That's where we wanted to have the most impact. And looks like we got a couple more questions. Perry, great, thank you. Let's see here. Oh, yes, as our folks are slammed. Yes, Perry, I think we concur. We're hoping that this functionality is just, helps with the timing of that and not having to spend so many hours just inserting those rows or just updating those values. So that was the whole purpose of these guys.
Do we have any other questions? Or any other feedback that you'd like to share? And we do have for those schools that are just seeing this now and are going to be requesting it soon, we do have upcoming sessions that hopefully will benefit you. So coming up, we've got today the open office hours, and then we have another one on Thursday. So if we can get your agreement signed really quick, and we'll get you the code out immediately. If you have any time, feel free, use it. Let us know your feedback. We've got our next office hours later this week. Please come again, attend. Maybe you'll have a bunch of new questions because you actually started to use it. And then you can watch the full video from the prior session from our website, which goes into a bit more detail. And then later at the end of the month is another opportunity yet again, where we're going to have an open discussion via Hug. So again, that'll be similar to an office hours, similar to Q&A, that sort of thing. It's just another opportunity to ask your questions and for us to get your feedback and see if there's anything else we can do to help. We did get another question in enrollment maintenance, are we using the swap enrollment action for moving classes? Yes, we are. We are using the swap. And that's why we can get all the delivered functionality around like auto enrollments. and around the related classes, all of that works beautifully because we're swapping them out of one set of classes and we're swapping them into another set.
And if you look on the enrollment request search, you'll see that the name that's associated with that swap action is the user who's running this thing, not the name of the process. So you can audit who's messing around.
Yep, there are lots and lots of audits, and all of those run controls all have audits. The processes that do the changes all have audits. And then of course you have the delivered audit. So the next step, and what some other institutions were talking about, is once they clone classes or in the future possibly assign instructors, they can do 3 C's and send out communications, or they can do notifications to notify folks. They can notify students of changes. All of that information is in the databases, so it is easy to grab the information based on date times, based on what was, what is, and send out nice communications to your users on if they've been impacted or not. That would be that final last step if you wanted to automate this whole process. Finally, Bob offered to handle all of your feedback and requests. So robert.lawson@sierracedar.com. Feel free, reach out to Bob if you have additional questions, and he'll coordinate with the rest of the team, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Again, we are focusing on bugs. We want to keep the team free in case there's a bug that's blocking somebody so that we can get that turned around. And we are in design of possible future enhancements, specifically around the meeting patterns functionality. And that is essentially it for us. We have about 5 minutes. We could take a couple more questions if you have any.
I think the only other plug that I would do, I'm hoping that the really quick overview for those of you who have not seen this before was helpful, but that link up there where it's got the HE class, that has the full hour-long session recording from the last time.
Excellent. Then on that note, we are glad we're able to help y'all. And please, if there's anything else, feel free to reach out to us, let us know. But we will maybe see some of y'all on Thursday, maybe at the end of the month in the HUG webinar. But otherwise, hope everything is going well, and take care. Thank you, everybody.
And Perry, good luck.
Yeah, exactly.
Indeed. Thank you.
Everyone, good luck.